Okay, folks, we're going to talk about 88 Energy. I've been asked on Twitter to talk about this. This video is brought to you by Financial Juice, a fantastic Squawk service for traders. Get all your breaking news and up-to-date information, and Earn to Trade, the best funded trader platform out there for futures traders. All right, let's get into it. Okay, folks, where are we? Tuesday, 23rd of April, 2024. I think it's high time we checked in on a stock that I covered, I think, 2 years ago. Yeah, I think it was about 2 years, 1 year ago. And that's 88 Energy. Okay, so symbol EEENF. All right, now this is an oil wildcatter stock. And, you know, these are highly volatile stocks. I mean, if you think penny stocks are volatile, it's in there in the same sort of space as penny stocks, pink sheets, whatever you want to call them. And I'm gonna cover an update here on 88 Energy because this has been quite it's kind of crept back in. I mean, I bailed on this stock shortly after I covered it a couple of years ago, and a couple of us here in Duggan Capital were trading this stock. We didn't have a good outcome. Took about a 50% cut on the position, but what I want to do in this video is I want to talk about, well, roughly revisiting what the stock is. We're going to look at the logarithmic chart, and there is news coming down the pike today. I see that there's a trading halt being put on this stock, I think in London, judging from what I'm reading here on stocktwits.com. Somebody jumped out at me on Twitter and said, "Hey, do you have any update on 88? What do you think of it?" And that's kind of interesting because I had been talking with Kurt, one of the Duggan Capital traders who is in Asia, who had a position on this, and he's actually still holding a very small position, just as a reminder in his portfolio to never again trade these wildcatters. Okay, so let's kick it off. What is 88 Energy? So 88 Energy are an oil exploration and production company based out of Australia. They have drilling projects in the North Alaska, and they also have acquired a production rig, I think in somewhere in Texas. I've forgotten where exactly it is. It doesn't really matter. It is a flowing rig generating income. And then they have some other areas now that they're looking at. But okay, so what I really want to get to talk about is why this is a clear stay away. And I actually talked about this yesterday. I still monitor it on one of my dashboards just to see the fluctuations in the stock and see what's going on. I do find it an interesting stock to track. But what I want to cover, I suppose, for the rest of this video, I mean, is going to be what they have done in the last 2 years and why it's gapped down, and then what they've done since that gap down. What are the future prospects? And then we're going, what are the future prospects for the company? And then we're going to look at the chart. Okay, so just to start off with, you can see here on the right-hand side of the screen that I have the stock twit up of 88 Energy is down 12.9% yesterday. This thing has been a wild ride. I think at one point yesterday it was up like 14%. It seems that there is some big news coming, and they've halted trade on the stock. And so before we kind of talk about what this halt is, we kind of need to understand where we've been. So I'm going to dip in and out of the chart and come back here, okay? But we're not gonna do a huge technical look here in this section of the video on 88 Energy, but it's important to realize where we are and what the company needs to do to keep going. Right, that's the really important one here. So if we just go over onto the chart here, this is a logarithmic chart. Okay, so I'm not gonna. This is not gonna be an explainer as to what a logarithmic chart is, but in short, the scales price scale here is non-linear. So you see, it doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It sort of compresses the volatility and shows you relative movement as opposed to linear movement on a stock, right? On a chart. So they can be very deceptive in one way, but then they can also bear the truth in another way. And to really, especially in a very volatile stock where you get a couple of gaps here and there, it's actually really handy to look at a logarithmic. Okay, so relative to where this thing actually opened on trade for like a fraction of a cent back in November 2020, right? We're still, we're up at like point zero. It opened at 0.000. I mean, I don't know. This is just farcical to talk about where it opened, but where we are trading relative to where it started trading, we're up quite a lot. And essentially, these multiples are really attractive to pink sheet stock traders and the pump and dumpers and the Timothy Sykes. When I saw this thing yesterday, it was up like, I don't know, 12, 14% at one point yesterday. And then we were looking at some oil. Actually, we were looking at some equities yesterday, and about an hour after the open, then I looked back and 88 was like down 12%. And I just thought, Jesus, okay, so the Timothy Sykes of this world are really railing this thing. They're pumping it and then they're dumping it, right? And so this is just kind of a look to see where we are. So why did we gap down here? So essentially there was a lot of anticipation for these guys to bring in a successfully drilled hole in the North Shore of Alaska. When was that? In April 2022. They drilled the hole once. They had mixed. They didn't get a clean test, really. They didn't get a good reading, and they had come back. They did that unsuccessful test, I think, in 2021. They came back in 22, and they had a more sophisticated geologist and a drilling team. So everyone was waiting with bated breath to see if, I think it was in the Porcupine Basin was the name of the reservoir that they were drilling. Everyone was waiting to see, were they going to get this well to flow? Okay, they drilled the hole. I think the hole collapsed halfway. They didn't even get to flowing the hole, let alone getting a successful drill. Or they may have drilled and it was dry and the market gap down. And so what you see in this yellow area here is that gap. Now, I mean, for me to show you that, it's probably better to show you on a non-logarithmic, like a regular chart. So here is the sort of gap. Now, these are monthly bars, right? So I think if I go down to days, we'll probably kind of get a better idea of that gap there. So you see here, like that gap down. I mean, it's probably, okay. It's off by a couple of fractional cents here, but I mean, it doesn't really matter. Either way, it gapped down. So this is where I kind of took about a 50% haircut on my position, and I immediately then, I think in that same session, I double down on the position with the expressed view of then working out of that on any form of an uplift. And, there was quite a few people executing that type of strategy at the time. I'm not going to talk about other traders that were on this who we work with. But you see here that day that if we zoom in on that day of the gap down, you saw that there was a rally out of there. So if we kind of just move this to the side, you see the gap down here, and then we sort of had a rally up of, I think it was about 50% from the lower price. So immediately bought in on that open again, and then just worked out as we lifted on the gap. And then just took my medicine on the trade and done, so, and I fully went into this, and a lot of traders would be fully into this, understanding that this is wildcat oil E&P development, oil exploration E&P, and these things can happen. So, you know, fair enough. And I have this experience with biomedtech stocks as well. They're definitely on my list of, pre FDA approval. Biotech is so dangerous. And it's very similar to how dangerous this stuff is. Anyway, so we gapped down and it worked out and I'm done. Walked away. And, you know, I've kept tracking it ever since, but I really have lost the attention span for it. Okay. But now, if we go back to these monthly bars, just to kind of have a look at this thing, right? And see, you know, it's like, I think that's called a dead snake pattern. But if we go back to the logarithmic, okay, we can see that, okay, what has happened in, you know, over the past month for 88. Okay, so I think they've drilled two more holes. Now, for me to be exact on the exact price, on the exact news releases and all this stuff, I just have the broad terms. Okay, so this is not like the finite. I know there's going to be a lot of people who are telling me, well, you know, actually this happened, and actually the readings were there, and the geo reports from there, and I'm not interested. I'm not interested. That the broad headline terms are this. All right, this is it. They've drilled two holes. One of them had a flow test. As far as I know, it was 50 barrels a day. Okay, on a roughly $20 million outlay, it's going to take you, I don't know, 20 years. Roughly, quick maths in my head, it's going to take you about 20 years to return that fund on 20 million outlay. You need to be doing 1,000 barrels a day flow test to make this an interesting project. Okay, that is not an acquirable asset. It doesn't. That sort of flow test does not make 88 Energy acquirable at all. Okay, all right. Well, number two, drilled, successful flow test, 40 barrels a day. Not successful. Okay, you're talking about, you know, anywhere between 5 and 20 million, and it's probably 20 million to get these flow tests done. All right, so maybe you take the two. All right, now you've got 90 barrels a day flow test across two wells. Let's say you do the two wells for 20 mil or a little bit less. It's going to take you, it's too long to return that fund. Okay, so now, and I was talking with one of the guys in here out of Asia who invests in this sort of stuff, and he was just like, they're going to have to do a cash raise again. And I was like, yep, you know, they're going to have to raise another 20 million. So what does that mean? That means that for 88 Energy to keep the show on the road, they're going to have to go back to new investors and say, we want 20 million, say. So what are the new investors going to get for that? Well, they're not going to go on a promise. They're going to go on shares. All right. So with the current share price of like a fraction of a cent, it's a fifth of 1 cent right now, roughly. For new investors to bring cash in, they are going to want that securitized in stock. So what does that mean? It means you have a reverse stock split, which means that all existing shareholders, say if you own 10 shares, you're going to own, say, 20 shares, but the share price will get devalued down to allow for these new investors. So why is it a dilution? It's because, well, they will increase the number of shares available. So you as a shareholder with 10 shares, I mean, you know, I think I could walk down the street and pick up a find, you know, €1 piece, and I could buy, I don't know, a lot of shares of this thing. For these new investors to come in, existing shareholders are gonna have to be diluted. Okay, so that means stock down. Okay, and so that means these guys are going to get smoked today, and that's why they've halted trade in London. Maybe they halted in Australia, but either which way, the announcement today most probably is going to be that they're doing a reverse stock split to allow new investment in to keep the show on the road. They do have cash coming in from a well, I think, in Texas. They're looking at doing something in Namibia. I don't really care. This thing is just a dog It's a dog, it's a dog, it's a dog. Now, what I hope for existing investors, and hope is not a trading strategy, but what I hope, which I think is extremely, extremely improbable, you're talking like 3 to 5% probability. Okay, it's not even worth thinking about trading. Is that they have a successful flow test of the tune of 1,000 barrels or more a day out of a new rig that they or an existing asset they have, and therefore the price is going to revalue to the upside. Now, as I said, I haven't been monitoring this for, you know, like closely for about 2 years, but I've been reading some of the top line press reports out of this and analyst reports, and it's not good. I think they're going to have to dilute, they're going to have to bring in new money, etc. Okay, so let's look at the charts really. Um, on the logarithmic, there's not really much to say about this thing. There really isn't. I mean, it's not good. It's just not good. You know, so I think this thing is going to go to the 1/10 down here. The lows that we had in March and February, March, and 21 for a retest. I don't know if that's going to be rebought. I definitely don't think it should if this thing is reverse stock splitting. I think once they get this reverse stock split done, you're probably going to see a change of management because new investors coming in at these prices are going to say, hold on a second, the direction of this thing is not going the right way. You're obviously not hiring or buying the right type of leases in the right type of areas. You're trying to do something to play for an acquisition from ConocoPhillips, and it's just not working. So existing management, I think, is going to have to be gone. They're just, a lot of these guys can get led by their geologists who are getting highly paid to produce, favorable reports, and then they just disregard the well logs and just say, no, I think, the oil down there isn't as tight as you think it is. So, look, I'd love for this to be a good story instead of a bad story for 88 at the moment, but I just don't see it coming. All right. So, look, I've gone on long enough here. If anyone has any questions or anything like that, please feel free. But for now, like looking at the commentary on 88, like for example, the top comment here on StockTwits right now is if they do dilution, then who will buy the shares? As nobody is literally buying now, right? And there's people praying here. Vertical foil here. I'm just going to pray openly here. If you don't like it, sorry, it wasn't for you. Please, God, let this hold. Speed to 88 Energy is announcing a winning bid for the oil find. No dilution news, only good news. Ah, man, I can't swear on here because we have ratings to keep up to on, or censorships to keep up to on YouTube. But yeah, insert swear word here. Like, praying is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. All right. There is no way this is good news. They have a flow test of 50 barrels. There's a flow test of 40 barrels. I could go out in my back garden right now in County Carlow in the borough of Ireland, and probably get a flow test of 50 barrels a day of oil. I mean, it's not happening, man. I mean, how much do you want for 50 barrels a day? Well, I mean, that grade of oil would probably say it's $50 a barrel times $50, doing about 2.5 grand a day. Now, to return 20 million, to return 20 million, yeah, that's, I mean, I don't know. It's just not enough for me. I just don't see the commercials happening. If they come out with a flow test of like 100 or sorry 1,000 barrels, then that becomes you're talking about acquisition targets for ConocoPhillips, which everyone seems to talk about. But I just don't see this happening. All right, so you got this guy hoping here. We come down and here's Mr. Lilitish on 88. The trading halt has been requested pending an announcement by the company in relation to capital raising. Right, so there's no news coming about flow tests. It's about capital raising. raising. And everyone's just used to this crap on 88, you know? Oh man, this is good. I mean, I'm getting a kick out of this anyway. So look, if you're in here, cut it. Cut it. Cut the trade. It's a dog. Cut it. All right, I'm going to do a video on Petrobras, which is where it's at right now, you know, and I've been in Petrobras for I don't know, 4 or 5 months. And we're going to cover that video in the next one to come here, you know, but stay away from the dogs. You know, as a lawyer that I had once in Texas when I was working in oil and gas software out there, as he once said to me, is like, Tim, you lay down with pigs, you're gonna get dirty. Isn't that the truth? Keep it tight.